Question number 9. Each individual should make the life choices that guard their independence and strengthen their self-reliance. You said you mostly agree with that. And I said, I disagree strongly. I gave it
okay,
a 0.
so here's why. I already know why. Because, so part of this was I was reading this on a plane on a very small phone. So I was like having to scroll back and forth. And so I was thinking, like, I had actually just been reading White House Warriors. So I was thinking in a like American society mind frame of like, you should like be able to be independent and self-reliant. Like, this is like my emergency manager, like, hey, we're not showing up for 72 hours. You got to be able to take care of yourself. And that's where I agree. But if you're talking about it the sense of like husbands and wives, like you should make life choices that guard your independence and strengthen your self-reliance, I give it like a 1. Like, I think that you
give
should...
it a 1 if you're married, but what do you give it if you're talking to a 25-year-old?
I give it a 3.
Who's not married? 3. You go back to a 3.
Yeah, because I think like part of it is like I think that it's like a very similar theme to what I was just talking about. Of like, I don't want to. I am against gender roles when somebody tells you that this is the way you should be. Like similarly, I think that if you like being a young woman. I spent my early years making sure that I didn't have to rely on anyone, that I could choose to rely on someone and I could choose to make a relationship, but I didn't want to be like, you know what? I'm not going to go to college and I'm not going to pursue any type of career. I just am looking for my, what do they say? Like looking for your like MD or marriage diploma or
your
like,
MRS degree.
MRS degree. Right. Like, and so like that, like, I feel like I have confidence in our as an individual in a relationship because I know that while like I do not want to do things on my own, like I am a whole person and I could independently take care of myself financially, like, you know, in the ways that you need, like my physical well-being, like my security. I'm much better at it with you, but like knowing that I can be my own person was very important to me going into a relationship. And I feel like people sometimes who go into a relationship that aren't able to like promote their independence and self-reliance can get sucked up in relationships in a way that makes them more dependent on the other person. And I think that's a bad way to start out. But I do think that once you enter a relationship, you can allow yourself to be more vulnerable, but it is easier and more practical to do that, knowing that like if everything went south, like I could take care of myself. And everything went south could not just be like we break up. It could be like your spouse dies. Like, are you able to be self-reliant? And I think that is, I think it's a good idea.
Yeah, I think that there's a real risk with like underestimating the unintended consequences of that mindset. And it goes back to what Greg said and like your sort of agreement with Greg about the like, you know, use your early and mid 20s to like be your own person and, you know, figure out who you are and like make bad choices. I don't think he said that exactly, but like I read that into it. Right. But like, you know, he did say like, be selfish, you know.
I don't think it's about make bad choices. I think that one thing that really so like you've brought me along on a lot of things in the past couple of seasons and I'm like, oh, okay, I can see it that way. I don't think you're ever going to win me over to this because I think that you have this negative vision of something that I think could be a lot of positives around. And I think it's not about being irresponsible. I think it's about the opportunity to take chances. And chances that you are less likely to take when you have a family that is dependent upon you. But that like maybe the right choice for you as a young person, and maybe taking those chances early on pays off for you in your longer term relationship. And so I do, I look at it more in that realm than like, you know, going out and partying, but like, you know, like, do you want to go be a foreign service officer and live in Africa? Like, you're not doing that with a husband and kids. Like, go do it and try it. And, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think the foreign service officer thing, like that resonates with me. I'm like, yeah, if you think you might want to do that for a while, then do that before you settle down. That makes sense. I think if you think you might want to be in the military for a few years, but probably not the rest of your life, then it makes sense to do that before you settle down. Although if you're going to do that for the rest of your life, then that doesn't make sense, right? Then you just have to find somebody who's going to be willing to go along with that lifestyle. I think if you're going to be a Gary Vaynerchuk style entrepreneur, it makes sense to spend 5 or 6 or 8 years like just hustling and like eating ramen noodles to like pursue your dream. Mm-hmm. And either like, you know, iterate on that until you're ready to like do it in a way that is compatible with marriage and family life, or you, like you say, like you become Zuckerberg and you're like, well, now I can get married because I'm a billionaire. Those kinds of life paths, I think, could justify the like postpone marriage and family life, because there are high risk things that are, you know, it's easier to travel fast and like be agile and adapt to situations and seize opportunities when you're traveling alone.
Right.
Like that makes sense. But it's one of these things where then people use that scenario, that rationale to justify, to rationalize, like, well, they're not doing any of those things we just said. They're not doing high risk stuff. They're not like pursuing some dream that would be a lot more difficult to pursue with a wife and kids. They're just like hanging out and like blowing their money on frivolous stuff and just delaying responsibility. And they're just extending their college years through their 20s of being like, yeah, I go to class, and I used to go to class before I met up at the bar, and now I go to a job before I go meet up at the bar. I'm not doing anything useful with this time. I'm just blowing it. And like, I don't think that like the foreign service officer scenario justifies like the average person who is not spending 5 years being a foreign service officer.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're probably in alignment. Like, I wouldn't be super supportive of our kids just being like, I just gonna like do drugs and work, right? Like, that's just not a thing. But I feel very similarly, and this might be controversial, but like people who also believe like, I got to get my kid into like a private high school or the best college because like I want them to have this like crazy, amazing career. And it's like, again, like that doesn't really bear out. Like, do people who get to elite places in life many of them do go to like higher end schools, but there's 99% of the rest of the people who like are doing regular jobs today, right? Like, you're like nowhere further along.
Right.
And I feel like people have this like perception in their brain. It's like, well, that's not reality, you know, like that's not getting you anywhere. And so I think, or where you think you want to go, and was that sacrifice financially like worth it? For a lot of people, it does not pay off. It's like, great, you know? And so I think, I do agree with you there. But I think that there are a lot more people that are like, you know, maybe like, I want to be like on Wall Street. I want to be a trader. I have and sometimes it takes people a little while to realize like, hey, like that's not actually going to be a dream. That's a reality. But for a lot of people, it ends up being a reality. And I think it's important to like recognize when the life that you're going, if you are choosing a life that you think may not be compatible with being married, like you should be honest with yourself about, or at that time, you should be honest with yourself. I thought Greg's point about like, you know, early on you're hustling and you're trying to do all this stuff. I say all the time, like when people ask like, what's your, what would be your recommendation for women who want to have children? One of the things that I think makes it a lot easier, and I'm not saying this is the only way to do it, but having worked in your organization for a number of years and built the goodwill there, is critical to, I think, successfully raising children, because it's very like, I felt no guilt going out on my maternity leave because I've worked for my organization for 11 years. I knew I put in a lot of time and a lot of hours, but if I had just started a new job, I think I would have been trying to like cut short my maternity leave. I would have been like, I don't want them to think that I'm, a slacker. And so I think similarly, like, build up that goodwill early on, like do the hard work, take the tough jobs, deploy with your job if that's an opportunity. But I think it's important to help kind of get yourself further along so that you have the goodwill and grace from your organization down the road when because I have stepped back a little bit, and I think I have bosses that like have seen me really hard charge and understand the kind of ebbs and flows and are willing to be more flexible because of it.